Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's Dr. Ray Fitch from Vet Triage. It's 7:46 a.m. Pacific Time, July 2nd. Yay. Feel free to donate, subscribe, do all the things. Thank you for everybody who watches in the playback. I see that some of the playbacks are quite popular compared to others. That's good. So we're going to talk about cancer in animals. We're not going to go into too much detail regarding the pathology behind it, but we'll touch on it a little bit. And then we'll talk about practically why we're seeing more cancer. Obviously, it's hard to prove some of these more practical concepts because animals live for 6, 10, 15, 20 years plus. And in order to conduct a study to find out why an animal gets cancer, you have to have a bunch of animals, watch them their entire life, run all the tests all the time, and the ones who get cancer, figure out why are they different than ones who don't. And that's an impossible study. So we speculate based on more short-term data, which may or may not be accurate. We don't know. But cancer in animals is just like in people. There's same, the causalities are going to be the same in both instances. So let's talk about biologically or genetically, why do animals get cancer in brief. And this is also not doing the topic much justice because this could be easily an entire textbook or lecture on it. So we're going to go into brief. So in order for an animal to get cancer, a cell has to mutate, and the cell can't just have a mutation in it because cells get mutations in them all the time as we live our lives, and our body is very good at killing cells that develop a mutation because the body knows something is wrong with that cell. And you don't want a cell with mutation, especially a mutation that's disadvantageous to the body, to the organism, to be passed on to future cell generations. So the normal process of cell development being protected is the reason why we don't get cancer. Now, when a cell gets a mutation, and a mutation will be caused by a handful of categories, things like, for example, radiation, like with UV light when you're sun tanning, or if you smoke cigarettes. It could be genetic, just random mishap in genetic code from RNA and DNA replication. There's a handful of different reasons like that can cause it. And once a mutation develops, it either kills the cell because it's not compatible with life, or the cell gets destroyed by the body because the body recognizes it's abnormal, or the mutation survives. Now, the vast majority of mutations probably don't amount to anything. They're occurring all the time. The body doesn't recognize it for whatever reason. It doesn't kill the cell that has a mutation, and so for some reason it propagates, but it doesn't amount to anything. And that's probably the majority of mutations. Then there's going to be a small subset of mutations that do have an effect on the organism, and it may even be an advantage. And that's how evolution works over time, right? A mutation develops, it survives, the organism benefits from the advantages that mutation gave it, and because the animal survives even better, it is able to pass on that mutation to its offspring during reproduction, and then it gets propagated throughout the animal's lineage. So that's how evolution works in brief, again, in very brief. And so sometimes mutation is a good thing, but mutations are random by definition, and the body can't choose when to get mutations, what kind of mutation, what the outcome will be. So we focus on the bad mutations because good mutations being generated and propagated over time, it takes generations towards millions of years to see that. So we don't really see it in our lifetime, but we can study it from the past, and also we can identify when a genetic mutation does something bad to the organism, because usually something bad means the organism dies or develops cancer or some other disease that's genetically based. Okay, so that's a basic foundation of that. Now, specifically to cancer, in order for a cell to have a mutation that then turns into cancer, the cell has to break certain rules, and we won't go into all the details about it. But for example, if a cell gets a mutation that allows it to ignore its own lifespan, right? So it can live forever in theory, then that is a root cause of what causes cancer. If a cell, for example, has the ability to invade tissues or spread to other parts of the body, that also is a hallmark of cancer, of a cancerous cell. So those are just some examples of microscopically why a cell would develop a mutation and then be able to have cancer. At the end of the day, regardless of whether or not the cells figured out how to live forever, or figure out how to invade tissue, or figured out how to build its own blood supply, regardless of that, once that's figured out, then, and the cell continues to replicate because it has this ability, this immortal ability, then it becomes cancer. And so, which means that cancer is essentially a large clonal population of one diseased cell. It clones itself and continues to grow and spread without any limitations, because it inherently has developed a mutation or mutations that is ignoring those limitations. Hopefully that makes sense. And so that's how cancer begins on a microscopic level. Now, you can look at it another way too, because you as a pet owner and we as veterinarians can't control the mutations that animals develop and what kind of mutation and whatever. So what do? Well, or how do you explain? How can you explain more practically what causes cancer? And so that comes to my second point, which is exactly that. Why practically? Well, animals are living longer, and cancer, by definition, except for some rare exceptions, is a geriatric animal or an old person disease. So the longer animals live, the more likely they are to get cancer, just by virtue of the fact that that's the way cancer usually works. Mutations can develop in utero at the level of the gametes or throughout the individual's life. And so that can happen at any time, but then it takes time for that cell to survive its mutation, clone itself, develop cancer. And so usually an animal's older by the time it gets cancer. So if animals live longer because of better nutrition, more people spending money on their animals, more advanced testing on the animals, and they're living longer, better lives, they also are prone to getting cancer. That doesn't mean we should be for animals with shorter lifespans. That's not the point. The point is that it's a trade-off. The longer you live, the more likely you are to have cancer or develop cancer in your lifespan. And so that's one practical reason. And the second practical reason why animals get cancer is because our tests are getting better. We have access now to CT scans, so computed tomography, and MRI scans, magnetic resonance imaging, that we can run on animals. And these more advanced tests can find diseases earlier and with more accuracy than than not having those tests and only relying on blood work and ultrasound and radiographs. These advanced imaging modalities can identify diseases earlier and with more accuracy than we did previously. So because animals have access now to better diagnostics, we're able to actually find cancers. So, for example, if you had a 10-year-old dog in the 1930s that was having seizures, you didn't have access to there were no diagnostics then for that, and so you'd probably put the dog down or throw some medication at it and see what happens. But the animal could have had cancer, and now because we can label dogs and cats with cancer, it seems that the rate of cancer has gone up, but actually our diagnostic ability to identify cancer is actually what's increased. And they've always had the cancer, and now we see it more. So if you look at any studies that realize, oh my goodness, the rate of cancer, the frequency of cancer in animals is going up, I mean, don't forget this. There's some pretty practical reasons why animals are living longer, and also we have better diagnostics. People are willing to spend money on the pets so we can identify cancer. So it's all about how you log the disease. If you diagnose cancer, that animal has cancer. If your dog died, 300 years ago from some unknown disease, well, then it doesn't get logged as cancer. So yeah, so I think that's a good introduction to this. Hopefully, it enlightened folks who are watching this on the playback. And let me know if you have any questions. Of course, vettriage.com. Anytime you want to discuss anything, including cancer, if you want a second opinion or a third opinion or fourth opinion, we're here. And I'll look forward to the next video. I should be on tomorrow, July 3rd, with another tantalizing live stream. We'll talk to you then. Bye.